Welcome back to Small Caps, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kerry Stevenson, and I've asked Siobhan Lancaster. She's the Managing Director of 92 Energy. ASX code is 92E. They are looking for uranium in the Athabasca Basin up there in Canada. It's been a while since I've spoken to Siobhan, and they have been busy beavers up there with drilling programs underway. Siobhan, good to see you. Thanks for coming back to Small Caps.
Thanks, Kerry, for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, our audience loves what you're doing up there. The last time we spoke, lots of really good commentary about and congratulating you on all your hard work. But fill us in, because when I spoke to you last time, it was July last year. You've got busy. You've been doing some drilling, and you're starting off a new drill program. So let's start off with just a brief overview of who are 92 Energy for those who might not know, and then give us an overview of what you did at that second half of 2022.
Absolutely. So 92 Energy is a uranium explorer. We're based in the Athabasca Basin of Canada, which is, as you may or may not know, the highest grade uranium district globally. So it has the significant Cigar Lake deposit and the significant McArthur River deposit, which of course are uranium mines. So they're the highest grade uranium mines in the world. We've been exploring for uranium in this jurisdiction. So our Gemini project is only 20 odd kilometres from McArthur River. And of course, very early on in our life cycle as a company, we had a uranium discovery. So that's the Gemini uranium discovery. It was on our fourth drill hole ever. We hit uranium, and we've been basically drilling out that discovery since. So we've done several programs on it. It's now defined over 200 by 220 metres. It's high-grade, near-surface uranium discovery, and, I think it's got significant potential upside. So we're currently drilling that further to really ascertain the scale attached to this initial discovery that we've got.
So when I last spoke to you July last year, so have you, the second half of last year, were you just continuing to do the drill out around Gemini? Was that your focus?
Correct. So we did 2 drill programs at Gemini last year. We did a winter drill program and a summer drill program. Then we went to our Tower project, which is 10 kilometres from Cigar Lake. We needed to spend money on that to keep that in good standing. And so we did a drill program there. And we actually hit uranium mineralization there. Oh. So we've had a lot of success with inaugural drill programs and hitting uranium. It's got some beautiful uranium pathfinders attached with it. So yeah, that was a tremendous drill program. And of course, we'll go back there later on during the year, I would think.
You just said something which I'm curious about, a uranium pathfinder. What's a uranium pathfinder?
So, look, it's a really interesting question. Basically, when you have uranium deposits, there's certain boron, uranium content, there's certain clays, etc., which you only really find with a uranium deposit. So having uranium pathfinders tends to indicate that you're fairly close to a uranium deposit. So that's what's exciting about Tower. We're really keen to get back out there down the track, but Gemini is really our baby. That's the one with pounds in the ground at the moment. So we've been defining that up, and we're really looking to expand it during this program and really demonstrate the scale attached to it.
You just mentioned as well summer program, winter program. It is Canada. It's the Athabasca Basin. Does it get really, like where I'm sitting at the moment, Siobhan, it's really hot.
It's pretty hot in Perth too, but yes, it gets freezing.
Can you drill all year round? Is there different, like, are there times when you can't drill because it's too cold? Because you say winter, summer program, what's the difference?
Yeah, sure. So it's a little bit seasonal in Canada, and that's just because of the extreme differences in temperature. And obviously, if you have a lot of snow, it melts, so it makes things pretty difficult during that time of year. So they tend to have a winter program, which is where everything freezes up. It gets to minus 40 degrees in Saskatchewan. So everything sort of goes nice and hard. It's nice and easy to drill during those conditions, and you can make snow roads to get access to the site, which is what we've done this year. So So it's a good time to drill. The winter drill programs tend to be favoured. And then the summer drill programs is really, you just wait until the ice has sort of melted and done its bit, and you come back sort of in May. So summer drill program is really anything from May all the way through till November. It's quite a long season.
Okay, so right now it's the winter drill program.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Gemini, scale at Gemini?
Yeah, so certainly that's what we're looking for. This has some analogies to Rabbit Lake, which I often describe to people. So in terms of the size of the current footprint of the original Rabbit Lake deposit, it's very similar. It's very similar in terms of the depth of the Rabbit Lake deposit and the grade as well. So it's quite a good analogy. And the interesting thing about Rabbit Lake, of course, was it had that initial deposit and then a series of zones going up to the north from Rabbit Lake. So we have a sort of corridor which looks quite similar to that Rabbit Lake deposit, and of course Rabbit Lake was mined. It was 220 million pounds.
Okay.
So quite substantial in terms of size, and so that's really what we're trying to do during this program. We're really trying to ascertain, moving along strike, are there potentially additional zones up along that trend, which is 2.8 kilometres, which we've identified via some pretty significant geophysics that we've done over it. But we're also looking to expand the known mineralised area, which is that 200 by 220 metre area that I was describing to you earlier. So exciting! It's exciting.
Yeah, I like you have got great energy and you love this project a lot.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned Rabbit Lake, it was mined 220 million pounds.
Yes.
Can you give us that sounds pretty good. Your market cap at the moment, I think, is about, and I know it's way too early to say it because you're not there in terms of how big this deposit is. It's still very much exploration at the moment.
Sure.
But do you think it could be as big as or bigger than Rabbit Lake?
I mean, it's a great analogy. So you just really don't know until you do the drilling, but certainly it does have potential for scale and significant upside. So it's not only Rabbit Lake that has a series of zones attached to it, it's also McLean, which was also a mine. So these are two very significant mines that they've had in the Athabasca Basin, and very similar in terms of the way the geophysics looks, the geology, the position to surface. And what's also really fascinating about those deposits is the zones can vary significantly in terms of size, but also in terms of grade. So, for example, one of the zones at McLean, had sort of a grade profile of 0.3% uranium, which is still high grade uranium compared to the rest of the world. But then it also had a zone which was 6%. So really, we don't know what to expect until we do the drilling, but we do know there is, a lot of analogies in the Athabasca Basin for significant potential upside. The important thing is that we've already defined a known area now, and if we can continue that as we move to the north, that would be a fantastic outcome for shareholders.
And it is outcome for shareholders. You just talked about grades and things, and there are people, including me, that would say, what's an average grade for a uranium deposit around the world? And is Athabasca, I think you said earlier that it's one of the highest grade mining areas for uranium. I'd like to ask you two questions. First of all, what's an average grade for uranium? What sort of grades are you looking at the moment? Yeah. And what is the Athabasca getting? Why is it such a good area?
Yeah, so I can't explain to you, because I'm not a geologist, why the Athabasca has super high grades, but they do. The grades sort of vary anywhere from 0.1% all the way up to 15%. In fact, the Hurricane deposit, which was actually discovered by Steve Blower, who's on our board, is the highest grade uranium deposit in the world, and it's 20% uranium. So just to put that into context, compared to ppm, it's 200,000 ppm. So when you look at those African grades, they're talking 200 ppm. So there's a humongous difference. Where we've got intercepts, so that 42 meters at 0.62% was actually the 8th best intercept globally last year that was drilled on a uranium project, which is pretty significant. So that included 6 meters at 2.17%. So that 2.17%, to put it into context, is 21,700 ppm or thereabouts.
Right.
So extremely high grade when compared to some of the other deposits. But of course, the average grade that's actually mined is about 0.1%. And, there's many different methodologies for mining. So, it's not really comparing apples and pears. But I think the important thing to note about this is it is near surface. So it does have the potential to be open pit mined, which of course is tends to be significantly cheaper than underground mining.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
You mentioned somebody on your board. Is it Stephen Blower? I think you just mentioned. Talk to us about the board, because I quite often say to people, you know what, you can look at this, there's lots of companies out there, but it's the people that you want to look at as well. They've done it before. So I don't think we've covered this before. I think it'd be interesting as to who's on the board and their experience.
Yeah, sure. So everyone on our board has, a huge amount of uranium experience. I, of course, was part of the extract team, which I think I've spoken to you about before, but we exited extract for $2.2 billion, and I was heavily involved in that transaction. I mean, it's kind of interesting because when they discovered HUSAP, it was quite sort of similar to what's sort of occurring at 92 Energy, where it sort of just bumbled along and people didn't really pay much attention to it. And then suddenly the share price, sort of accelerated and went on a run when people thought, oh my gosh, this has got size and scale. So that's extract. Then, of course, Steve Blower, he's ex-ISO Energy and ex-Denison. So he's been involved in 2 very significant discoveries in the Athabasca Basin. He's an absolutely tremendous person to have involved in the company, and we're very lucky to have him. And then, of course, we've got Richard Pearce, Matt Gorsey, and Ollie Cruiser, who are all really well known in the uranium business. So we're very fortunate. It's a great board. And, I think we couldn't have a better setup. But I think the other important thing that we really should note is how impressive the exploration team is that we've got. I mean, they are super impressive. They have had, success on 2 inaugural drill programs, which is pretty amazing. It's a young team, and they are really, really fantastic at what they do. They know their stuff, and having Steve Blower as well involved on the technical level is tremendous, really.
And I think that's important to note as well, Siobhan. You got 7.2 million in the bank, so you're well cashed up. You're not talking to me today saying we're going to probably do a cap raise. You don't need it.
No, we don't.
And I think that's important to note. But what's going to be the milestones in 2023 that you're looking at? You're going to expand at Gemini, possibly looking at Tower as well. I want, I guess, because I don't think the market has fully cottoned on to what you've got your hands on up there. And what's your view on that? Do you think maybe it's because you haven't spoken to me for 7 months?
I think maybe that's the problem. Look, I, as I said to people, the market was a little bit schizophrenic last year, so we weren't the only company to sort of suffer from the deluges of the market. But I think this year, we're going to be doing this drill program. I think possibly we could look like a very different company at the end of the year to what we look like at the beginning of the year. We've only got a market cap of $40 million. And of course, this has potential to scale up. And that offers a nice investor sweet spot is what I'm going to say for our investors, and a good entry point as far as I see it at this point. So
investor sweet spot, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, as you said, I don't think investors have quite cottoned on yet to what the potential upside of this project is. And, of course, we're going to drill and start hopefully proving the scale associated with this deposit.
All right. So talk to us about the drill program. Have you started already? How long does it go for? Because we talk winter, summer.
Yeah.
Now I'm talking to you for those people that see it sometime in the future. This is, where are we? We're at the end of February. So what's happening in the coming months?
Yes, so we're currently undertaking a 4,000-meter drill program. We've just commenced that last week. And that 4,000-meter drill program, as I said, we've only drilled 220 meters of a 2.8-kilometer trend. So we'll be working our way up that trend. We'll be doing sort of more aggressive step outs, and to really try and ascertain that scale attached to this area. And we'll also, at the actual mineralized area, be stepping out directly from there as well. So we'll be expanding the mineralized area, but looking for potential zones as we go to the north. So that's what will happen in this drill program. It's 4,000 meters, and then we'll sort of sit down and work out exactly what we've got, and we'll come back for a more substantial drill program going forward. So in May is where I think we'd come back.
Okay, so that 4,000 meter drill program goes from now. Has it started?
Yes, it commenced last week.
Commenced last week. We'll go for a couple of months. Then I guess you'll look at the data, look at what's coming back. That'll take you a little while, and that leads you into what you do in the summer program. Is that correct?
Exactly. Correct. Yes.
And is the winter program fully funded? All good to go with that? Focus mainly on Gemini.
Correct. Yes. Absolutely.
What about Tower?
So Tower is a fantastic project. We're definitely keen to go back there. We haven't made a decision exactly when that's going to happen yet, but hopefully towards the end of this year. Yeah, as I said, it's a fantastic project, but really the focus is at Gemini. It's already got that known mineralization there that we're looking at, and potential room for quite significant expansion. So I think there's potentially a lot of value there for shareholders just at the Gemini project for now.
And I think it's important as well to note that it's the Athabasca Basin, which, from a uranium mining jurisdiction, there's been other mines that have operated in that area. So you're not going to have any challenges there, are you?
No, it's a well proven jurisdiction. So obviously we've got Cigar Lake and MacArthur Mine, which are currently operating. There's several other projects at the moment that are going through the permitting phase, including NextGen's Arrow, and some other projects as well. So, it's a very favorable jurisdiction for uranium. As you know, you do not want to be in a jurisdiction that is not proven in terms of uranium mining, because anything can happen. So we're not going to have that as an issue in the Athabasca Basin. And that really is one of the reasons why we selected it as the jurisdiction that 92 Energy wanted to go after.
I want to come back to what you said a moment ago, which is it's close to surface, and this drill program, how deep are you going to go? Because I guess the deeper you go, the more expensive the drilling. What are you looking at? Have you planned that out yet with your drill program?
Yeah, so on average, our holes, the mineralization tends to sit from 90 to 200 meters. The holes, they tend to be about 300-meter holes. So yeah, they're not too deep. They're pretty shallow actually for the Athabasca Basin. And yeah, so that's the average length hole is 300 meters.
My question to you then is, do you think that there could be higher grade mineralization at depth? Is there a reason why you're only going to 300? I know that it's mineralized from surface, so why would you spend extra money? I'm just curious as to how you work it out, the drill program and the depth of it.
Yeah, so obviously the guys on our team have drilled out a lot of basement hosted deposits in the past, so they're really going off their experience. It tends to go through a mineralized zone and then hit some granite, and so we go through the granite a little bit just to make sure that that continues, and then we stop the hole at that point. So you have to stop somewhere. Yeah. Certainly in the future, there is an opportunity for us to do some deeper holes to, ascertain whether or not there is uranium mineralization at depth. But, this is really based on the experience of the team.
What about government support, government funding? Is there any of that available to 92 Energy?
Actually, that's a great question. So uranium has just been classified as a critical mineral in Canada.
Wow.
which is excellent. So we do get that flow through funding, which basically means we almost double the amount of money that we can raise for the dilution. So last year we were able to raise, we did one flow through raise, and I think we raised 8 million, but we only sort of had to issue $5 million worth of shares, and then it's this flow through benefit on top. So that's a really, really handy tool that Australian investors probably aren't really very familiar with. And we certainly utilised that last year, and we will utilise that going forward. That actually multiple has increased since we actually did that first flow through. So that multiple has gone up because of the classification of uranium to a critical mineral. So there's that. And then obviously the Canadian government is, I think, put aside sort of an infrastructure fund associated with critical minerals as well. So that's potentially something down the track that we might be able to have a look at.
I had a question from someone recently, I think it was on our last interview, where they said something along the lines of lots of interest from the US when you're listing on the OTC. And I think you've listed on the OTC. So to the person that asked that question last time, they're done. It's called NT ELK, is it?
ELF.
ELF. I was close. NT ELF is the OTC code. So yeah, you're on the OTC. Does that make a difference, do you think?
I mean, look, it's early days yet, but I think it will make a difference, particularly as we start to drill out this program and with the movement in the uranium price. Again, something the market hasn't been paying a huge amount of attention to, but it has been moving. We're sort of sitting back up around the $52 mark now. So as that uranium price moves, I think you'll find more and more interest in the uranium space again. And of course, investors from North America would be very interested in what we're doing in Canada in the Athabasca Basin.
Siobhan, I get frustrated all the time because I say to people, all this talk about carbon and zero carbon, and I go, uranium has zero carbon emissions. So I'm hoping people are going to start to wake up to the fact that this is a fantastic energy source, and we're going to need more and more energy as we go to all this electrification of the world, aren't we?
Yeah, look, I think we're already seeing that. It's particularly being driven out of China and India, who are, going pretty heavily into nuclear. Small modular reactors are getting announced all around the world. And of course, we've seen extensions of nuclear power plants, which is quite amazing. So Japan, of course, has just restarted all of their nuclear power plants, and they're looking to build small modular reactors. So they're really going really back into nuclear as a way to decarbonize. And I think, it's going to be really interesting to watch, particularly with small modular reactors and that technology as that emerges. So that technology, once it emerges as a proper technology, I think you'll see people starting to really ramp it up all around the world. And that will be exciting. The US just did this study on converting coal power plants to small modular reactors. Now, imagine if they did that around the US, it would be pretty sensational. So I think this is where the world is going. The realization is that renewables, as good as they are, don't offer that base load energy, which is really what societies need to keep the lights on. But also it's a far cheaper form of energy. And so you're seeing, in Germany, they've shut down their nuclear power plants largely. And you're seeing what has occurred with them paying more for gas, which of course is happened from the Ukraine war, but also because the wind hasn't been blowing and the sun hasn't been shining. So their electricity prices have gone through the roof over there. And we should be watching as Australians thinking, gosh, do we want to go down this path?
Yeah, and as Australians, we've got a lot of uranium in Australia, but we just don't like to have, because I think that people get frightened of it. But actually, as you just mentioned, these small modular reactors, you wouldn't even know they existed. They're very they're unique. You don't realize what they're doing, but they can pull in a lot of power, can't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they can replace those coal fire stations very easily, and they plug straight into the electricity grid. So there's no requirement to upgrade the grid. So it's a pretty cheap option for governments, really. And they're a lot safer than the old nuclear power plants as well. So a lot of work has been done around the safety of these So yeah, I think small modular reactors are going to be the way of the future. But just what we're looking at now is just a general increase year on year in nuclear power throughout the world, everywhere. So yeah, the Western world, I think, will get with the program shortly on it.
I hope so, Siobhan. It's always good to chat to you, but your share price has been a little bit lackadaisical at the moment. Why do you think the market hasn't cottoned on? Is it, like you said, was it with your previous company that everyone went ignored, and then all of a sudden woke up and understood what it was you got? Do you think it's almost like deja vu?
Yeah, I think it's exactly like deja vu. So look, we just have to keep doing what we do operationally, and proving up the scale of this new discovery at Gemini, and we'll continue to do that, and the market will eventually pay attention. And I think with the movement in uranium price as well, people will start looking back into uranium stocks and think, oh wow, there's a discovery there, and they're only capped at 40 million. Better have a look at that. So I think that there's a lot of potential there. Definitely an investor sweet spot at the moment.
In the investor sweet spot. Well, let's wrap it up, Siobhan, and give me 3 reasons why people should be sitting up. I think I know already, but why should they be sitting up and taking notice of 92 Energy right now?
Sure. So, well, we're well funded. So that's one reason. Obviously, Gemini is looking like a fantastic discovery. It's near surface. It's high grade. It's got potential for scale. So definitely, if I was an investor, I'd be paying attention to this drill program that we're currently undertaking. And that market cap of $40 million, of course, is very compelling for the potential upside of 92 Energy.
And as Siobhan said a moment ago, and we discussed, she's got a great team, not just on the board, but her exploration team who are out there continuing to explore, discover, grow, and scale what they've got there in the Athabasca Basin. But for now, Siobhan Lancaster, great to see you. Don't leave it so long. Come back and chat to me when this current drill program's done.
Will indeed. Thanks, Kerry.